Imagine three runners at the start of a massive race. They take off from the exact same line at the exact same time. For a while, they're pretty much neck and neck. But decades later, one is way out in front, another is holding a steady pace, and the third, well, the third has fallen behind. This isn't just some story. It's the real-life economic journey of China, India, and Pakistan. So how on earth did their paths diverge so dramatically? Let's get into it. Okay, so check this out. It's kind of wild just how synchronized their modern starts really were. You've got India and Pakistan gaining independence in 1947. Just 2 years later, the People's Republic of China is established. And then by the 1950s, all three are kicking off their first five-year plans. They were basically using the same playbook, a state-led strategy to build their economies from the ground up. For a long, long time, they were on a surprisingly similar track. And that really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? If they all started from more or less the same place with very similar game plans, why do their economies look so incredibly different today? That's the puzzle we're going to solve in this explainer. So the first big clue is something of a plot twist that you can see in the numbers. It's really a tale of two completely different eras, what you could call a great growth shift that honestly changed everything. This table tells such a fascinating story. Back in the 80s, China was an absolute economic juggernaut. Pakistan was growing at a really respectable pace. And India? Well, India was at the back of this particular pack. But then you fast forward to the period between 2015 and 2017, and the whole picture just completely flips on its head. Let's break down what happened to each of them. First up, India. It goes from a 5.7% growth rate all the way up to an impressive 7.3%. Out of the three, it's the only one that actually hit the accelerator. That's a huge jump, and it made India the frontrunner in this more recent time period. And then we have China, a mind-blowing 10.3% growth in the 80s. I mean, that is true double-digit growth. But by 2015, that had cooled off to 6.8%. Now, that's still really strong, don't get me wrong, but it's a major slowdown from its peak performance. And finally, there's Pakistan. Its growth slowed down too, dropping from 6.3% to 5.3%. It's a noticeable dip that puts it behind both India and China in recent years. So what's going on here? What's behind this massive reversal? How did one speed up while the others hit the brakes? Well, the answer isn't just about abstract economic policy. It really comes down to people. And more specifically, it's about where those people go to work every day. Right, to really understand this shift, we've got to pop the hood and look at the engine of these economies. We need to see where their workforces are and which sectors, whether it's agriculture, industry, or services, are getting all that human power. Let's start with China's workforce around 2018. Only about a quarter of its people are in agriculture. The rest, they're pretty evenly split between industry and a huge services sector. This is a classic sign of a modernizing economy, a very deliberate state-led effort to move people off the farms and into factories and offices. Okay, now let's flip over to India. And wow, the contrast is immediate and it's stark. A massive 43% of the workforce is still in agriculture. So while its industry and services are definitely growing, a huge chunk of its population is still tied to the land. And Pakistan, it looks almost identical to India, with 41% of its workforce in agriculture. This shared feature is a really important piece of the puzzle. It shows that both countries have been facing a very similar challenge in moving their labor force out of farming. And this table, right here, this lays out the core issue perfectly. Look at the two columns for each country, the percentage of people working in a sector versus how much that sector adds to the economy. In China, 28% of the workforce in industry produces a massive 41% of the country's GDP. Now compare that to India. You've got 43% of the people working in agriculture, but they're only generating 16% of the GDP. That is a huge productivity gap. China figured out how to move its people into high-value jobs that supercharge the economy. India and Pakistan just haven't managed that same transition, at least not yet on the same scale. But, it's really easy to get lost in these numbers and percentages. We have to remember that this economic divergence isn't just an abstract concept. It has had a profound, real-world impact on the lives of billions of people. So let's look at the human side of this story. This bar chart really says it all. China's GDP per capita, which is a decent way to measure wealth per person, is more than double India's, and it's more than triple Pakistan's. This isn't random. This is the direct result of that shift into more productive sectors that we just talked about. And honestly, this might be the most incredible outcome of all. Look at this. China has virtually eliminated extreme poverty, with less than 2% of its population below the poverty line. Now, compare that to Pakistan, where nearly a quarter of the people still live in poverty. This is the real human consequence of those different economic paths. And you see this progress pretty much across the board, whether you're looking at life expectancy, infant mortality rates, or even access to basic sanitation. China's economic boom has translated into real, tangible improvements in people's lives, and it consistently outperforms its neighbors on most of these key metrics. So, as we start to wrap this up, it's become crystal clear that three very, very different economic stories have emerged from that one single starting line all those years ago. So, in the end, we're left with three distinct portraits. First, you have China. It used this powerful mix of market forces and heavy state intervention to create historic growth and lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Then there's India, showing more moderate growth that has recently started to pick up speed, but it's still wrestling with that heavy reliance on agriculture. And third, you have Pakistan, which has seen its economy slow down, often hampered by things like political instability and a heavy dependence on foreign aid and money sent home from workers abroad. The source material we're drawing from puts it pretty simply. The last 3 decades have taken these countries to different levels. And that might just be the understatement of the century for one of the biggest economic stories of our lifetime. And all of this leaves us with one final, absolutely fascinating question. As these three giants, home to nearly 40% of all humanity, continue down their separate roads, which model is going to define the future? Will it be the state-led boom, the slower democratic transition, or the ongoing struggle for stability? The answer will shape the world for decades to come.